Back again. This is Erica, the last of our babies that we attempted to have. Erica was only a single pregnancy, but even her pregnancy had its own interesting story. I forgot what initially made us think to go get a pregnancy test. I think it was because Steph missed a period, and she missed a period by more than a couple of weeks, which we both thought was odd. So I said, okay, let's go ahead and go get a pregnancy test, and we did, and it was positive. And again, we were very excited, but also very nervous because at the time, this was April of 2011, and we lost Junior back in November of 2010, so you're looking at no more than 5 or 6 months, I don't think. But so that made us a little bit apprehensive. But our doctor said everything should be good for this pregnancy, and for the most part, it was. The only really odd thing, and the thing I still kick myself over, was the day that we had an appointment for our very first ultrasound to see baby Erica. I believe it was the 8-week. The K5 Blazer I had broke down. I actually really liked that one, but I guess it ran out of oil, the engine locked up, and we couldn't go down to town that day to go to the appointment, and we had to reschedule it. So we wouldn't be able to see Erica at 8 weeks, but we did get to see her at 14 weeks, and as I was saying, we were a lot more apprehensive this time around. Almost every checkup, the doctor would use the fetal heart monitor to see how the baby's heart rate was doing. I think the big difference between Erica's birth or Erica's pregnancy and Junior's was we really didn't see the ending come with Erica. Well, I mean, Junior's was also kind of unexpected in a lot of ways too, but it was, every time we went in, things were great. There really wasn't any concerns. In fact, the doctor, up until about 18 weeks, the only thing the doctor was really concerned about was the fact that Erica's umbilical cord only had 2 blood vessels in it instead of the usual 3, which he thought was kind of odd. I remember really the first challenge per se, I forget what week it was. I think we definitely made it to week 20, and week 20 the nurses said it's by no doubt a girl. So we were excited, and yes, like Steph was saying in her vlog, I was thinking it was a boy, but she was thinking it was a girl, and ultimately she won that little argument. And she is right about how we came about the name. Of course, my friend Erica from high school, just always liked the way her name rang. I don't know why, just did. And Steph was always kind of fond of the name Erica, and we were juggling some other ideas around in our head too about what to name her. And I think we both just wound up agreeing on Erica because at the time we couldn't think of anything else that really fitted, I guess. So Erica Robin would be, well, Erica Robin Rocha, of course, but that's how we came upon her name. But I remember shortly after the week 20 ultrasound, the doctor said he was a little concerned because the first trimester screening came back, and I forget what it was he was concerned about, but I guess it was showing a genetic tendency toward a certain birth defect or a certain problem with genetics. And he said, I really would like you guys to consider an amnio. And at first I was against the amnio. The stories I've heard about it, they were bad. But for whatever reason, Steph decided she wanted one. She wanted to see if whatever information we could get off of it would help. and we were thinking it might also possibly help explain what happened with Junior. So, Steph wanted it, and I wasn't going to argue with Steph. I said, okay. Although I was still, myself, I was very apprehensive about the amnio. So we go in, and of course, it's at first it's the ultrasound. They check and make sure baby's fine, and I think they're just actually coming up on week 21. And she was still fine, good heartbeat. She was starting to move around a bit. So they said, okay, everything looks fine, and they were starting to discuss how they were going with the needle. I guess their biggest concern was they didn't want to hit Erica with the needle, which is obviously a concern. But, of course they stuck the needle in. And I guess it was almost kind of a near miss. It actually scared Steph and I a little bit. Because at first they decided, I guess they wanted to go in at the top of the amnio sac. And for whatever reason, by the time the needle and stuff was ready, Erica at the time happened to be hanging out a little close to where they wanted to go in. But, as they were putting pressure on her belly with the needle, you just see Erica kind of, I guess she knew something wasn't right, and she just kind of ducked, which I thought was kind of cute. I was just like, I hope she doesn't accidentally swim back up and get that damn needle. But, they did the amnio and everything was fine. About a week later, the doc calls us and he says, it's still going to be a couple of weeks to the final report, but he says the preliminary looks good. He's saying they're not seeing anything out of the ordinary, and we're like, well, that's good. I can't remember if we were at the appointment when we heard that, or if it was like a letter. I think it was like a letter or a phone call. Because I remember saying something about it on Facebook. It was either a week before or a day before, I can't remember now. But our next appointment comes along and, doctor's just going over what he knows about the amnio, asking us questions, if we're experiencing anything, things like that. And of course, by then we were a little further along. We were like 21, 22 weeks. We were actually starting to feel like we got past what we thought was the bad zone of about 20 weeks where we lost Junior. And I think we were talking about the only scare we really had was there was about one day where Steph said, because she was starting to feel Erica move, and there was one day where Erica just wasn't moving, and it kind of scared us, and we were actually thinking about going in. But I think this was like maybe about a week before. But it was really the only scare we had all along. It was like, alright, so we're getting ready to end the appointment. We knew there was going to be no ultrasound that day because it wasn't ultrasound day for us. But as usual, he said, alright, let's go ahead. I want to go ahead and check baby's heart rate, and then you guys will be good to go. And we said, cool. So he goes to get the fetal heart monitor, and our doctor was pretty good. All the times before, he'd usually find Erica's heartbeat pretty quick. But for whatever reason, of course we now know the reason, but he wasn't finding Erica's heartbeat that day. He was looking around, it wasn't picking up on the monitor. He's like, well, let me try a different scope. I guess he had a backup fetal heart monitor. That wasn't working. I think he even tried using the stethoscope, and that wasn't working. So, needless to say, Steph and I were both already apprehensive by this point because we're going, this ain't good, why is he not getting a thing? But we tried to remember what nurses and doctors have told us. The heart monitors, if the baby's turned just right, you're not going to pick it up. But we were just kind of nervous. I mean, because the amnio was only a week before. And stuff like that. So, he's like, alright. So he went to get a portable ultrasound, and for whatever reason, he couldn't even find Erica on the ultrasound. But I guess the ultrasound, if I remember right, something was going on with that particular machine that day anyway. So what happened is she's like, alright, let's go ahead and wheel over to the big ultrasound lab, which is where we would go on our ultrasound days. But I guess he was so concerned about it that he had us over there. And by then, neither Steph or I are in good shape because we're just like, what's going on here? Doc, you're not telling us anything, but you're telling us don't worry. So, of course, we go back into the ultrasound room, and it's almost the same setup. I remember seeing a bunch of blue. He was in there, the nurse was in there. They didn't stop like after 5 seconds this time, but they looked and he said, he looked at Steph and he said, I'm sorry, but Erica's got no heartbeat. Like they found Erica, but there was no heartbeat to her. And it just took the wind out of me, to say the least. Poor Steph was crying. And I was just in shock. I mean, Erica was doing so well, and then all of a sudden, no heartbeat, no nothing. But, again, it was just like seeing Junior. She was laying still, no heartbeat. So, the doctors left me and Steph alone for a couple of minutes. He came back, and I'm not sure how they could tell, but they said it doesn't look like Erica's been passed away very long. He said you could either go straight over to the birth center if you want, or if you got stuff to do, why don't you go ahead and do it and then call the birth center when you're ready to come back. And we kind of learned our lesson from last time. Last time we went straight over there, we had no clothes, no overnight clothes, nothing. And this particular appointment was on a payday for me. So we're thinking about it, we're like, well, we would like to go home and get some stuff, and we do have some things that do need to be taken care of so I don't have to worry about it over the weekend. So we opted to do that. I remember, I think one of our first stops after we got out of the hospital was we went to see Mom, and unfortunately we had to go see her at work. And she was trying to figure out why we needed to see her at work. And she comes over and she's like, I can't be out here too long, but what's going on? And we told her. And of course this made her very sad and, stuff like that. So we told her our plans, we told her we're going to go finish up what we need to finish up and we're going back to the hospital later that afternoon. She said, okay. So we did. We went and did what we needed to do and we went back home. Got a few clothes. Made sure the dogs would be okay for a couple more days because by now we were just living on our own. So make sure our dogs had food and water. We came back down. And that night actually was kind of, we did into the birthing center and we knew better by now. We kind of knew, we had a much better idea of what was going on. Actually it was kind of funny. The only real difficulty we had going in was when they went to set up Steph's IV, the nurses for whatever reason couldn't get an IV set up on her and they actually had to call over to the Flight for Life office and see if they could have a flight nurse come over and hook her up with an IV, and they did. But I just thought it was kind of interesting, but I'm not sure what got into my head next, but I can't remember if they asked me if there was anything they could do or if there was anything I needed. And I guess I just wasn't sure. I'm not sure what I was thinking. For some reason I was just thinking, I wonder if for whatever reason Erica might have been able to somehow get her heartbeat on her own. A modern-day miracle, I don't know. And I just said, I know this is going to sound weird, but is there any possible way we could get an ultrasound machine in here to check on her? I'm not sure how I worded it, but I guess I had to see her with no heartbeat, even though I saw it earlier that day. but they were cooperative about it. I guess is the word. I mean, they didn't really have any problem going to fetch the machine. And as as it would turn out, the nurse was polite about it. She explained, she's like, look, here's your baby. And this, of course, she was showing me where her heart was, and she's like, you can see the heart here, and the chambers aren't moving. And I said, yeah, I see that. And of course, nothing was showing up on the EKG, or that's what I would call it. So I guess it was just kind of a confirmation for me, which Steph was okay with. And I think the rest of the night, they kind of did the thing. They set Steph up on the same pill to get her cervix to start to dilate. And the rest of the night was fairly quiet. I think we had my mom visit, one of my friends come over, things like that. And we wind up going to bed. And I'm not even sure if Steph was on any sleeping pills. I know they had to put her on oxygen, because for some reason her oxygen levels weren't where they wanted it to be. But we sleep that night, wake up, get breakfast the following morning. But I guess her cervix was just opening up fairly slowly, which I was expecting based on, how slowly it opened with Junior. But I still remember, Mom came by early that morning, and she said, text me, just keep me updated on what's happening, because I guess she had to run some errands that day. And, so I said, okay. And about, I think 10 o'clock comes along, 10 or 10:30, and the nurse comes in to check on her. And again, Steph wasn't really doing any labor or stuff like that, so we're just kind of sitting there waiting for, things to start happening. So the nurse goes in to check Steph, and she looks up into her, and said, it looks like, I forget what was said, either the fluid sac has dropped or the fluid sac is down or something like that. And she's like, don't panic, I just need to call the doctor and let him know. But someone told me to text Mom and tell her what was going on, and I think I said something about a fluid sac. I think I literally told her something about a fluid sac dropping. And Mom texts back, I'll be right there. Which, she told me she would be right there if there was any signs that the baby was coming. But she's texting me this, and I'm like, well, what the hell does this mean? Because again, not the brightest with labor or stuff like that. So I didn't know. I guess Steph quickly found out what that meant. Because almost right away she wanted to labor. But there was just no time. There was no type of pain medications that were available that would help numb her up in time for the baby to come. So unfortunately, Steph had to do this all natural. Again, I didn't take any Lamaze classes, so I'm just doing the best I can to comfort her. She's in pain. I'm wondering where my mom's at, because I'm like, I really need somebody here that knows what the heck I'm doing. But I guess Mom winds up hauling Bud across town and even speaking through her constructions and all that's I've been told. But she gets there, and she gets to our room just in time for the water to break. And unfortunately, I was standing right over the top of Steph when it did. But it was also kind of heartbreaking this time around, because unlike with Junior, Steph literally had to do a delivery of Erica Breach. Her water broke, and the first thing that comes out is Erica's legs. And just, of course, I'm not all that big of a fan of blood and gush, and So I was kind of trying to recover from that without losing my breakfast. But at the same time, it was just painful. It hurt to see, I was already in pain from knowing the fact that Erica was passed, but Steph was in pain, of course. We're doing this really sad thing. And I think if I recall right, I was crying a little bit during delivery. But then Erica's head got stuck, and it was a big moment of fear. Because I'm like, please, I'm thinking, please, whatever you guys do, don't break her. I mean, she might not be living, but that's still a very beautiful body. I don't need it being torn up and mutilated. Unfortunately, nothing got broke. The doctors were able to work it to where his head popped out. And if I remember right, they did the same thing with Erica that they did with Junior. Initially, they started her off in a box. You know, they took her away to clean her up, of course. They put her in a box. And she looked a lot like Junior. But I'm not sure how to put it. She looked like to me, she just looked like she developed a little more. But the one thing that Steph and I agreed on was, and I wasn't expecting it, because if I remember reading right, her eyes weren't supposed to be developed until later. But her eyes were partially open, just enough that we could see green pupils. My daughter had migraine eyes. But it's just, there was a lot of the same emotions, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of sadness, and things like that. I can't remember if we had a lot of pictures taken with her that day. I don't think either the photographer wasn't available or something to that effect. I don't remember taking a lot of pictures with her that day. I mean, we got pictures, but maybe it was just a shorter visit, I don't know. But of course we delivered Erica and Mama got to see her for a few minutes. And later in the day, I guess you could say I got brave, because I got to do one thing with her that I didn't do with Junior. And I guess I felt a little more comfortable about being able to hold her without having to hold her in the tub. And I got to actually hold Erica, of course swaddled up in her blanket, but I got to hold her. I spent quite a while holding her. I mean, I didn't spend too long because I was still very worried about, you know, how fragile her body was, but I held her. I know Steph did. I think almost everybody did. And we had quite a few visitors that day, and I was actually getting kind of apprehensive because so many people wanted to hold her, and it was just... I mean, I can understand people wanted to hold her that were important to us, you know, but it's just... I guess it's a thing with me. I got so apprehensive about her body being constantly moved around. I just wanted her to be able to rest a little bit too. Even though she was, in a sense, already resting eternally. But it was just, you know, one of those things I wanted to cherish my time with her. And we already knew we weren't going to have that much time like we did with Gina because Steph wasn't showing any signs of an infection or anything. And they were already actually talking about releasing us later that night. So I just spent the day, you know, we spent the day just trying to enjoy our time with her. And stuff like that. One of the things I'll never forget though was it was getting to be into the evening, and of course it was time to start packing up. We were starting to figure out what we were keeping and things like that. Just the closer it got time to go, and the more sad I got. Steph and I were both the same way. We didn't want to leave Erica. I mean, I remember there was a couple of things the nurses had to do with her. So they had to take her away from us for a little bit. I forget what, but it was just stuff they needed her body per se for, but then they'd bring her right back. But it's just we were more apprehensive each time she went away. We just wanted her back. But I still remember that Steph went to go get in the shower so she could freshen up, so she could go home, and I was sitting out there in the room with Erica. And I couldn't help it. I knew I had to say goodbye, and it was hard. Of course, I cried. She cried. I mean, it's weird. You know your babies are always going to be with you, but it's hard when you have to tell them goodbye in that sense, because you know, to a point, you're not going to get to hold them the same way again. You're not going to. I mean, of course, we can still hold them, but not in the sense that you could hold them in the hospital. So those memories never leave you. The memories that won't ever leave me will be their ultrasounds, both while they were developing and, of course, the final ones. And just spending time with them. You know, it's just, especially for you guys that have to go through this, I can't emphasize, enjoy that time you have with them. Because it could be 24 hours, maybe a little more. It could be as little as 6 hours. But to me, it was a chance to be dad to both my son and my daughter. Tell you what, it's really hard to watch as the nurse, wheels them away that final time. There's just so much emotion in it. You're upset. I don't really know how I was feeling. It's hard to describe it. But I'm gonna wrap this up. Again, I just wanted to do this in response to my wife Stephanie's videos, and to just kind of say to all the fathers out there that have been through this miscarriage or stillbirth, I guess I'm one of them, but just to tell folks, hey, we're still, I'm not saying people don't care, it's just, I sometimes wonder if people really understand our viewpoint. But I just kind of wanted to give people a father's perspective. But I hope you enjoyed. I'm Chris, and I'll see you guys on Facebook.